I've been wanting to talk about this topic since episode 1 because I feel it's so overlooked. This probably isn't going to be easy for some of you guys, but here goes. Imagine you're hanging out with a group of friends. Everything was fine, then suddenly something in the background pops up. A song, a name, a place, something that triggers a memory. And just like that, the feeling of loss, grief, sadness all rushes in, and it's all visible on your face. Then someone saw it and said, "Wait, are you still dealing with that?" It might be said with a kind intention, but you can hear there's probably a bit of judgment behind it. And they follow up with, "It's been like what, a month?" You can feel this reflex kicks in. Your facial expression quickly changes and you give it a quick smile and said, No, I'm fine." And that's where it begins. Not the day you're hurt, but the day you start burying that hurt deep inside you. Now you've got two heavy things to carry. Not only the original sadness, the original grieving, but you're also having to start to pretend like you're not. So how long are you supposed to be sad? And who even decided that? It feels like everyone around you knows the answer. 3 months for this type of loss and 6 months for this type of grieving, but no one can explain where those numbers come from. If this sounds like what you've been through or what you're actually going through right now, this episode is for you. Welcome to Self-Full, the show where we dig into our emotions together, taking on one messy feeling at a time. My name is Wilson, and just like you, I've spent years telling others I'm fine, and I got so good at it that I almost believed it. Until I figured out that I wasn't just carrying my grief, but also something else that's just as heavy but totally unnecessary. And today is all about anyone who's carrying a weight that society thinks they should have already moved past. We'll be discussing why the pain sticks around longer than you think it should, why grief can still come back even when you thought you were over it, and one little shift that can help you heal faster and ease the burden of pretending. And that last point is super important. It might not sound like a huge deal, but it's what helps the other two really sticks. So if you're going through that grief right now, stick around, because this one really matters. Before we dive in, here's some context. Say you're going through a loss that meant a lot to you. Maybe a relationship ended, perhaps a friendship drifting apart, or it could be that someone close to you that passed away. And let me say something plainly before anything else, because you might have been waiting for a long time to hear it. The loss that you're going through is real. Don't let anybody tell you different. It counts. And at first, the world was pretty supportive. People reached out and told you to take your time. But here's the kicker. The world's sympathy has a timeline. By about a month in, the message starts to slow down. By 3 months, folks expect to see the old you back again. And after that, the questions start to change from, "How are you doing?" to, "Have you thought about dating again?" Or, "Isn't it time to move on?" I mean, they sound nice, and you know that they have good intentions. But what they really mean is, your time is up. The problem is, your grief didn't get that memo. It's still there, popping out on random Tuesday, at random places, or at random times when an old photo comes up. And so you figured out how to handle it quietly. You showed the version of yourself that the world is okay with. Happy, busy, looking like you've moved on. But the real you, that's saved for your alone time. And if we're being honest, you're kind of living a double life. You're fine in public, but struggling behind closed doors. And what's really wearing you out isn't just sadness. It's the effort of putting on that mask. If this sounds too familiar, know that you are not broken and you are not behind. But there is something worth digging into here. Where did this invisible deadline come from? And why does missing it stings more than the loss itself? And that's exactly where we're heading first, which leads us to point 1. The deadline isn't yours, and missing it affects you twice. Let's kick things off with an important idea that can totally shift how you see things. If you're still feeling hurt long after other things you should be over it, you aren't just dealing with one thing, you're juggling two. The first thing is the loss itself. That pain is very real and completely valid. Something where someone matters to you and now it's gone. So of course it stings. It's like getting hit by an arrow. But then there's the second layer that makes it even tougher. The thought that you shouldn't still be hurting. You might feel like you're lagging behind in the healing process. Like everyone else thinks that you should be moving on while you're still stuck in grief. So the loss is the initial arrow. And that feeling of shame and pressure that you haven't moved on, that's the second arrow. And here's the kicker. It's the second arrow that you don't have to deal with. This second arrow is optional, but you chose to let that hit you. Now, where does that second arrow come from? It doesn't come from you, but it's borrowed from the vibe around you. When people ask, aren't you over that yet? What they probably mean, with good intention, is that they want to see you back on your feet. But it could also mean that their patience has run out, making you feel like your grief is overstaying its welcome. And society backed this whole idea up too. Everything feels like it's telling us to process the feeling quickly, feel it, share it online, learn, grow, and move on. Sadness and grief that doesn't have a clear end date just doesn't fit into that tidy picture. So if your grief keeps hanging around, it's not just sad, but it can make you feel like there's something wrong with you for still feeling that way. Let's dig a little deeper into how this second layer adds to your burden. And this part isn't me being poetic. People who study emotions have found exactly this. Shame isn't just a separate thought hovering above your pain. It's this whole new emotion that you have to deal with. Now, instead of just carrying one heavy load, you've ended up with a second one tied to a clock, a schedule. And a big part of what you're shouldering might not even be true grief. It's the judgment about your grief. Your own judgment about your grief. But here's the good news. While you might not be able to shake off that first burden today, you can definitely drop the second one right now. And here's your first tool. Spot the second arrow. Next time you catch yourself thinking, I should be over this by now. Don't argue with it and don't just let it slide. Recognize that thought and break it down into two simple statements. The first one is, the loss hurt, and acknowledge it. That is real. And the second one is, the deadline is someone else's, and that's not mine. By doing that move, you're separating your genuine pain from the external pressure about it, effectively putting down a burden, the second arrow that wasn't yours to carry in the first place. And why does this work? Because your grief and your shame often feels tangled up, making it tough to handle. But by spelling out the differences, your mind starts to treat them separately. Your pain gets validated while also recognizing that the should is just an outside statement, an outside noise. You're not trying to ignore anything here. You're just refusing to accept a bill that doesn't belong to you. Here's a scenario. Picture this. Say you're out with friends month after your big breakup. Someone casually mentions that restaurant you both used to love, and suddenly you feel this tightness in your chest before you even realize it. And one of your friends catches your face and says, "Oh no, are you still not over it?" I mean, that comment hits hard and you feel embarrassed all over again. It's been 5 months and everyone else seems to think that I should be moving on. So what is wrong with me? But this time you catch yourself before it becomes overwhelming and you start to figure it out. That tightness, that's the real pain of loss and it's completely valid. But the embarrassment, that's just the second arrow. It comes from a statement from your friend and also your own judgment towards your own feeling. It's not coming from the breakup itself. And realizing the difference between those feelings in a moment shift everything. Yeah, you're still sad, but for the first time in a month, you don't feel ashamed about feeling that way. I've been through the exact same thing. After one of my big breakup, the one that flipped my world upside down, I managed to hold it together for a couple of months. Then at some get-together, someone said, "Plenty of fish in the sea. You seem alright though." That's when it hit me. Apparently, there's a clock ticking on how long I have to grieve. So I started keeping score on myself. Now it's the third month and I'm still feeling it. That's a minus point for myself. Noted. Month 5, the feeling is still there. Almost teared up as I was listening to this song in the car. Another deduction on my point. I was basically grading my own grief like it was a school assignment sent by someone else. And honestly, that grading felt worse than the grief itself. The sadness was heavy, but at least it's straightforward, while the shame was heavy and so cruel. It didn't just linger. It was nagging at me all the time. You know what it feels like actually? It feels like whenever I was grieving, I was slapping myself in the face for grieving. But then something shifted during a pretty small moment. By I think about month 7, another wave hit and that old thought crept in again. I was telling myself, "Wilson, this is pathetic. It's been 7 months. Get it together. What are you doing?" But by some reason that night, I actually confronted myself. I confronted that thought and asked, who says? Who put this deadline in place in the first place? I couldn't name a single person who gets to decide that. The pain was mine to carry. There's no doubt about it. But the timeline felt like it was made up by everyone else. Actually, no. The timeline was made up by myself. So I decided to let that timeline go. After that, it felt great, at least for that night. But I'm not gonna lie, it slipped back in like 2 weeks afterwards. And figuring that out took time, but still, something shifted. The pain was there, but my own judgment lost its hold on me. And that's the first weight lifted off your shoulder. That timeline was never really yours, and the shame it brought is totally optional. But that brings up a deeper question about grief, because even without the shame, grieving can still be all over the place. One moment you're fine, and then out of nowhere, a random Tuesday comes along knocking you down on the ground again. And that's the next thing to tackle, which brings us to point 2. Healing progresses in waves, not in a straight line. Let's take a minute to talk about what it's like to have a tough day. Even after you made some serious progress, you could be feeling way better, and then suddenly something catches you off guard. Maybe a familiar smell, a favorite song, or an important date. In that instant, it can feel like you're right back at the beginning. Your inner voice might say, look at that, you're still grieving even after all these years. You never moved on. You're back to square one. And this is a tough misconception to tackle on this journey. A lot of people believe that healing is a straightforward path. Every day should bring a little more improvement, always going up towards a finish line. So when you hit a rough patch at month 6, month 7, or whatever, that all or nothing mindset makes it seem like you've completely derailed. But that's not how healing works. It's more like the waves of the ocean with ups and downs. Sometimes a wave of pain hits you hard. It peaks and then eventually it goes away. You can be enjoying some calm and then feel another wave crashes over you. But here's the truth about the wave. Even though it's extremely hard when you're in the thick of it, the waves change. Every time they come back, they get shorter and less intense. What used to ruin your whole day now might just mess up one evening. And then just for an hour, half an hour, a couple of minutes, and soon enough, the next time that wave hits, it'll be so small that it feels like just a fleeting thought, and eventually, that feeling will pass too. It's just that when you're overwhelmed by emotions, when you're in the thick of it, your brain can trick you into thinking this feeling is here to stay, that this is your new normal now. Your brain tells you that every time, but I assure you, the wave will eventually recede. Your mind just finds it hard to accept that when it feels swamped. So having a bad day at month 8 doesn't mean you haven't made progress. It's just one tough evening, not a whole month of feeling lousy. And understanding the difference is key to the healing process. You've just been looking at the wrong metrics using the wrong measuring tool. So let's use the right one. And here's your second tool, the wave check. When you're having a rough day, try not to ask, why am I still stuck in this? That's just your calendar talking, and it doesn't control your healing journey. Instead, ask yourself 2 different questions. How long do these waves last now compared to when it first started? How far apart are they now compared to the beginning? Take a moment to think about those questions. Say it out loud or jot it down on your phone. Something like, today is the first wave in 3 weeks, and before that, this was happening every single day. Let me give you an example. Say you're at a supermarket on a regular Thursday. You're feeling pretty good about life lately, but then suddenly the store's playlist hits you when that one song hits. And out of nowhere, your eyes start to get watery while you're standing still in the cereal aisle. And besides the grief, that familiar voice, the self-critic, creeps in. And it says something like, you're back to square one. You never moved on. You're still broken. But this time though, you hit pause right there and pull out your phone to check the notes you've been keeping. As you start to look back, you notice how long and how often these feelings have resurfaced. Initially, the grief lasted for about a full week. Then it returned after 3 days and lingered for an entire day. The next wave hit in a week later, lasting about half a day. And the most recent one came a month after the previous one, only sticking around for an afternoon. As you read through your notes, a sense of calm washes over you. You realize this isn't starting from scratch. It's just a wave. And it's becoming smaller and less frequent. You can see that all this time, the wave had been gradually receding as you move away from that grief. You allow it to roll through you, and it does. By the time you reach the checkout counter, you feel okay. Your mind has already shifted to other matters like which route to take home to bypass traffic. And you've avoided turning your evening into a session of self-criticism. And why does this tool work? Your feelings are totally valid, but your mind's way of interpreting them might be off. When the emotional wave hits and you're in the thick of it, your mind insists that nothing has changed. The wave check helps bring the real facts to light. They're shorter, less intense, and happens less frequently. And that's the progress the calendar cannot measure. You shift your focus from how long has it been to how much has it changed. The first one is a timeline that was never meant to be yours to begin with, but the other one reflects your actual healing progress. And I didn't even realize mine until just a couple of years ago when my last dog passed away. It wasn't my first time either. I've actually lost 5 dogs before that and 1 cat. Like the previous ones, the grief was devastating for me. But this wasn't my first rodeo, so I thought I was handling pretty good. And by the time a year rolled around, I felt like I had come to terms with it. Then one night, when I was going through some photos on my phone to free up some space, I stumbled upon the last picture I took of my dog, just a day before he passed away. I totally lost it. The sadness and the grief just hits like a truck. And then my thought went into pure panic mode. I asked myself, what is happening? Wilson, it's been over a year. I thought I was over this. But then I caught myself criticizing my reaction. So I took a deep breath, long inhale and longer exhale, calmed myself down first, and then started thinking about it. I recall that the first month after he was gone felt like I was drowning in grief every single day. But this time, it was just one night. And I hadn't even thought about the last time I felt that heartache. I mean, the wave of emotion came in, but it faded pretty quickly. And that's when I realized, that's not me going back to square one. That's how real healing looks like. It's not about dodging the waves, but having them come in less often and pass quicker. Honestly, when that wave hit me that night, it felt less like drowning and more like feeling his presence again, if that makes any sense. But I digress. Now you know how to spot the second arrow and realize that healing happens in waves. But keep in mind that both of these insights comes from the idea that you're dealing with everything on your own, pretending like I'm fine and not saying a word about it. That's the part we haven't really tackled yet. The whole hiding part. It's strange, but hiding isn't just exhausting. It actually makes everything worse, which brings us to point 3. You've been putting on a performance to hide your truth. Let's talk about the double life that a lot of us lead, because it comes with some hidden costs we often miss. First off, let's get one thing straight. Your struggles don't mean you're weak. It's just how our brain works. For most of history, if you show that you're struggling, it felt risky. If you couldn't keep up, you might be left behind. And that could be life or death. Deep down, we still carry this old coding in our brain, and that coding goes, don't let them see you limp. Back in the day, that logic makes sense when we're sitting around a campfire trying to avoid getting eaten by wolves. But that same logic doesn't apply when your best friend asks how you're doing. Yet that mindset is still stuck in our head, which is why I'm fine just slips out naturally. The problem is, holding on to those old beliefs can cost you more than you realize. I mean, think about how much energy it takes to keep up that act. You try to manage your expressions, forcing you to say, I'm good until it comes out naturally, and dodge conversation that feels heavy. It's like you're performing all the time while also dealing with your real grief. And no wonder you're feeling so drained after all of that. And the second hidden cost, yes, there's a second one, is super important. Hiding how you feel just keeps the pain going. Remember at point 1 when we talked about where the second arrow comes from? The shame that you feel when you hear other people's judgment. Well, shame thrives in secrecy. Every time you slap on a straight face and says, I'm fine, you're basically telling yourself that it's not okay to show the real you, to show your real feeling. Pretending you're fine doesn't make the shame go away. It reinforces it, which just makes you want to keep pretending that you're fine just to suppress it. It's a never-ending cycle. And finally, it's just way harder to deal with those emotional ups and downs by yourself. Your body naturally craves comfort from someone you feel safe with. Being around a calm, steady person who understands what you're going through can really help ease your pain in a way that just trying to power through it can't. When you're with someone who's steady, it kind of rubs off on you. This isn't just some placebo effect. There's actual science behind it. Your heart rate, breathing, and stress hormones and muscle tensions all calms down when you're around that one person. But if you keep your grief to yourself at all time, you're stuck fighting through it all alone. To put it plain and simple, grief that gets acknowledged can move forward. Grief that stays hidden just goes in circles. So ask yourself these 3 quick questions. Have you gotten really good at telling people I'm fine really fast? Do you find yourself changing the subject to dodge anything that might show your real feelings? And when you finally get back to your bedroom after a full day with people, do you feel so drained, so tired that you just crash? Yeah, those are not coming from your grief. but from all the acting and pretending. Now, I'm not saying that you need to spill your guts to just about everyone. That ain't gonna work. But instead, and this is your third tool, find that one true person. Pick just one person, someone you trust, someone steady, kind, and not someone who wants to fix you. The next time they ask how you're doing, drop the act and just share one real sentence. Something like, honestly, I'm still not over it. Most days are okay now, but some day hits me hard, and I'm just tired of pretending it doesn't. That's all you need. You don't have to give them all the details or put on a big emotional display. Just this one person can have the real story while you keep it light around everyone else, and that's totally fine. Let me give you an example. Say it's lunchtime at work, and it's been a few months after that big heartbreak, but you've been pretending that you're totally fine. In fact, you nailed the act so well that no one even asks anymore. But there is this one coworker, the steady one who checks in on you a couple of times back when you were still struggling, and actually listened to your answer. Today, she casually says, "How are you doing these days?" Like, really? And you're about to give your usual answer. "I'm good, busy, but doing so much better." While you're performing this act, that little voice in your head chimes in. If I open up, it might get awkward. She'll think I'm a mess. But this time, you toss that script aside, and you say, "Honestly, I'm not fully over it. I'm way better than before, but there are still some weeks when the sadness just creeps back in." And to your surprise, she just nodded and replied, "Yeah, that makes sense." There's no awkward vibes, no pity looks. She's not even trying to fix you or give you any advice. She simply remained calm around you. As you walk back to your desk, everything feels different. For the first time in a month, how you feel inside matches what you show on the outside. You feel lighter. Well, I guess lighter isn't even the right word for it, but you feel like you can be yourself. So why does this work? Because it tackles all those costs at once. The performance drops. You finally get a break from acting with this one person. The shame lessens. It can't survive in the open with someone who won't judge you, which proves the old belief wrong. Plus, your body gets the support it needs, a space where your grief can be acknowledged, letting it move ahead. This is why this tool is so important. By sharing it with just one safe person, you can ride the emotional wave without the burden of hiding it. And it took me way longer to find the guts to do this myself. Going back to that big breakup story I was mentioning earlier in this episode, I think it was around month 10, and one of my old buddies was in town. He asked the usual question, "So, Wilson, how are you?" And as usual, I launched into my rehearsed response, the same response I give to everyone else. But he just looked at me. He didn't buy it. He didn't push at all though, but he just let some silence linger. And I nearly slipped by without saying anything real. I even started making jokes, and I totally forgot what the joke was, but halfway through it though, I realized how empty it sounded. So I stopped and I just said, "Actually, no, I'm not over it. It's been 10 months and some days it just completely throws me on the ground, and I'm just so tired of pretending I'm fine." And then there was a pause. 1 second, 2 seconds, but to me it felt like a year. Every alarm in my body was yelling, "Dude, quick, do something to cover it. Make up some jokes or change the subject. Just smooth it over." And here's the key part. He nodded and said, "Well, 10 months isn't that long. It was a big deal for you, so it's okay." And that was it. He didn't try to fix me. He didn't give me any advice, no toxic positivities, nothing. He simply sat there and acknowledged my feelings. And that's when it hit me. He didn't try to fix me because there was nothing to fix. He showed me that I am not broken. And I want to point out what changed because it wasn't magic. I mean, the grief didn't just disappear that night. What shifted was dropping the act, the pretending, managing my expression, the loneliness of feeling like a stranger to everyone around me. Now, one person knew the real story with me. Every wave of emotion afterwards felt different. Not smaller at first, just no longer hidden away. And it's amazing how much weight it can lift just from being honest about it all. So let's do a quick recap. Dealing with grief can feel even heavier when society thinks you should have already moved on. So start by sorting through the two arrows. What you've actually lost, which is the first arrow and this is the real one. And the pressures from others about when you should be over. Remember, this is the second arrow. It's the one you don't have to take. So put that pressure aside. And when a wave of emotion hits you, remember, healing process is not linear. It comes in waves. It hits harder, longer, and more frequent at first, but over time, it'll linger shorter and less frequent. and more spread out. That's what real healing looks like. And remember, grief that gets acknowledged can move forward. So don't forget to find that one true person, that one true friend that you can be completely honest with and remind you that you are not broken. There is nothing to fix about you. And don't worry, the first time you do this might feel a little weird. You might find yourself deflecting like I did at first. Maybe you'll start with a rehearsed answer before hitting on the real one. Or you only feel more comfortable by texting it or writing an email about it. That's totally normal and that's totally fine. The moment that one true person knows how you really feel, the weight of hiding starts to lift. You don't need to have it all figured out. A messy honesty is always better than a polished act. Remember, if you have to put on an act, if you have to put on a show, you're acknowledging that you have something to hide. And this stops the healing process. It ends up making you feel like you have to keep pretending all the time. But when you're being honest, no matter how clumsy or messy it may come out, you're being real with yourself. And that's where the healing can really start. Your grief isn't late or slow, and it's definitely not a problem. And here's the real deal. There is no deadline on your grieving period. The timeline doesn't exist, and don't let anybody tell you different. You are never behind, so take all the time you need. Ride those waves and notice how they start to space out. If this episode has been helpful for you, consider sharing it to someone who might be struggling quietly. The one who always says they're fine a little bit too fast. I think you know exactly who I'm talking about. And you could be that one true person they feel safe talking to. And if you want to open up about what you're holding inside, shoot me a message on Instagram at selffulpodcast. Or leave it in the comment on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Take your time, all of it. It was never about anyone else's timeline but yours. And remember, I'm always here for you. Take care.